Hey everyone, if you've been on my Twitch for the past 2 months, you notice I've been playing a lot of the Neversoft Tony Hawk games, and my goal was to beat each of these games, at least till the credits. I tried to get most of the goals, but I skipped all the gaps. So while playing this, I kind of made a ranking of which ones were the worst in my opinion to the best Neversoft Tony Hawk game. So I'm going to start this countdown in a few, but I just want to go over some quick facts. Neversoft put out Tony Hawk in 1999 and put out 9 games in total every year. So once a year, you got a new Tony Hawk game. And these kind of trended on 3 categories. You had the arcade style, which will be the Tony Hawk Pro Skater 1 through 4. Story mode, where you get Thug 1 and 2, or Tony Hawk Underground, and American Wasteland. And then the true next-gen ones of Project 8 and Proving Grounds. So with that little quick intro, let's start the countdown with number 9, which is Tony Hawk Project 8. This is the first true next-gen one for the 360 and PS3, since American Wasteland was actually a port. So the graphics was a huge jump up, and they look really good for the time. Project 8 introduced Nail the Trick, where you got this slow-mo view, and each joystick controlled each of your feet, so you could do kick flips and cool tricks with that. They also removed a lot of the part creation and trick creation stuff that was introduced earlier. This was open world, but the negative here was there was a loading barriers in here. So for example, in this scene here, you'll see that I'm going from the road, and as soon as I go down to this path, I'm hitting another square that needs to be loaded in, and the frames drop horribly. And this actually was a negative on the gameplay because some of the exploration tricks had you going through like 3 of these loading zones. So you had to do a line in between these, and just hitting them would actually mess you up. Like, that was what made some of these goals harder. They also removed a separate classic mode. So you had to just play story, and classic mode was like baked in there and actually felt kind of in the way. You were just playing these classic things that now I kind of just want to stick to these missions. And you kind of play as your character. There's no free skate now because it's open world and you just start the game. That being said, the story here is very bland. You just see a clip of Tony Hawk saying he's looking for the top 8 skaters, and you get the top 8. That's the story, and they really never touch it until you get near the top. And you unlock sponsors throughout, but nothing's there. And the missions are very repetitive. There's this video guy that you have to do tricks behind, and a camera girl, which you have to do a special trick over some stairs or a gap or something like that. Also, there is 3 levels of difficulty baked into the game, so you don't pick your difficulty, but each mission has a AM, Pro, and 6 score in order to unlock. And there's no real motivation that if you really are a completionist, you'll do all the 6 because that's the only way you can get number 1. But after a while, I found myself just doing the AM ones just to continue. I didn't find it great. And another thing that was quite annoying during the story is your phone goes off like after every goal to tell you something, and it was very bad. So you could tell the big focus here was on the graphics. Anytime you're introduced to a new skater or they talk, it did a cool little cutscene. I did like that. They also enforced the building. They got rid of the part creation, but you did a lot of building to complete goals, which I found just very tedious. So with all these technical issues and boring missions, this was the worst Tony Hawk game from Neversoft in my opinion. Number 8, Tony Hawk Proving Grounds. This was the last game Neversoft ever produced in the Tony Hawk series, and this wasn't released a year after Project 8, so a lot of improvements came here. You saw that the graphics got a little better. The load times was a huge fix. They went back to kind of the American Wasteland, not tunnel, but you had certain paths where you could tell they're loading, but they weren't as long, and things were really smooth, and that was a big help in improving this game. All the levels are on the East Coast, so you play in Philly, Baltimore, and DC, and you travel between them. And you have 3 storylines you could go through. You can be a rigger, which you can build, a pro, which is more your traditional competitions, and hardcore, where you're back to like low-level skating. Not low-level, but like to the basics. So you did a lot of pool or bowl skating, so you had some stuff there. They also added extensions to nail the trick, like nail the grab, so you can do grab moves. And you had aggro kick, which you could kick to speed up more. The story is passable, like you do these little episodes and each of them kind of stick with the same characters. But it gets very odd, especially because I did a lot of the hardcore one. There was even a boss fight, like you fight this guy that went over a park, since you can now check people. So you can shoulder check other skaters and hit them out the way. So you had this like boss fight, and that was really weird. So like the level design improved a lot more than Project 8. Project 8, none of those things really stuck out to me, where here I felt like there was some more uniqueness. There was a lot more parks and cooler stuff, but still there's just a lack of content here. And when you start the game, you only get story mode and player 2. Like that's all the options there is. And you can tell this is like when they're fighting Skate, because Skate just came out. And it was like they were trying to match Skate and be Tony Hawk at the same time, which didn't work. And something odd that I didn't notice till later was there's no special bar. So that's why I would rank this number 8. Number 7 will be Tony Hawk Pro Skater 4. Tony Hawk Pro Skater 4 was big on adding spine transfers and allowed more manual moves. And you could do sketch, where you grab back of a vehicle and get more speed, and you can wall plant. And this is the first game to introduce talking to NPCs. The graphics are PS2, and they're very similar to Tony Hawk 3. A lot of my complaints come into the repetitiveness and the unnecessary of the story. The NPCs, generally at first, they're kind of easy to find, but then some are just like tucked in a corner, and you can't just like mark them. You have to find them. You can pull up a list, and if you actually go past them, it'll show you a screenshot where they were. But if you've never seen them, you'll just see question marks, and you have to go around the level till you find them. And this gets quite annoying because there's a lot of missions. So there's over 100 of them, so you gotta find all these people. And it's a repetitive structure of you have to backtrack. So once you hit 90 points, you unlock the pro goals, which each level has 5, so you have to go back and beat those. And then each pro skater has its own unique mission. So if you want 100% this, you're going to have to replay. You don't have to replay as every character like some of the older ones did, but you're going to have to at least play with everyone once to do one mission. They also added animals, and this was kind of cool interaction. Like in the zoo, you can hit the rhino, and that unlocks more of the level. So that was cool. The difficulty was a big increase here. Some goals, I actually had to use cheats. So in here, you use your money to buy 2 levels, or cheats pretty much. And one of the big ones is you have to manual in Alcatraz down this like 3 curves, and I could not do it at all with normal speed. I had to buy the slow-mo, and it became way easier, but there's a lot of goals here. There's a lot of like get 1,000,000 points. That was a rough one, or 1.5 million. So you had to unlock skill points, and this was done by just doing goals. Depending who you talk to, you end up unlocking one, and you can level up. The levels were huge expansions, more than 3, but I found a lot of dull points. I'll pick on the zoo again. There's this bridge that they kind of reference, but I felt like there wasn't much to it and not much to do there, so there's a lot more dull opportunities. Number 6 will be Tony Hawk Underground 2. This one, you could tell they were big on the marketing here, so they focused heavily on BAM and the whole Jackass movement. Steve-O's in the game, Uncle Phil's in there. The story here is that they kidnap the best skaters, and they're just going on a world tour and destroying things and just skating. This kind of brought back more of an arcade feel. So the best way I could describe a lot of the levels was like they're squares. They could be kind of big, and not all levels are exactly square. But you had this like square section that had all your components. So everything was tightly packed more and had more liveliness to the levels. I enjoyed a lot of the levels. There was just so much I can do and create new lines, and I enjoyed the arcade. And this is the best controls for a Tony Hawk game. They didn't really introduce much new, but they like refined all the moves. And if you ever see the Thug Pro on the PC, the mods, that it's based off of Thug 2, and for good reason. This had the best feeling out of all the Tony Hawk games. As I mentioned, his story, it wasn't really great. You just kind of go through it. And the game just had a lot of oddities to it. So it was trying to be real goofy. Some of the goals were just odd, like you just had to like spin on a statue and you got a goal. And each level you had to play as a vehicle. It wasn't like a car, but like Steve-O rode this bull, so you had to do missions with that. And that kind of made the game very tedious. So the level layout was improved by this, and I like the arcadey style of it, which is why it's number 6. Number 5 will be Tony Hawk Pro Skater 1. This is the first one, 1999. This was actually the first Tony Hawk game I did play. I started from the beginning, and this made me love the series. So it's instantly higher up there, but I was being fair because obviously a lot of features aren't here. The biggest one you'll notice is no manual. So getting these high scores was very tricky and a lot of grind lines. You had to make sure you had enough of those to continue on in order to get the high scores. The levels here are all iconic. You have the warehouse, which everyone probably remembers. The school, Downhill Jam is a big one. Even the Roswell level was very enjoyable. The soundtrack, I think this has been iterated enough. Tony Hawk Pro Skater 1 2 had the best soundtracks of probably any video game. It just fit the tune of the game with the punk soundtrack with the mix of hip-hop. It was very good and simple gameplay. You had 5 goals and 2 minutes to do them, and the more tapes you unlock, the more levels you unlock to continue. Number 4, Tony Hawk American Wasteland. This was a port. If you watch a lot of the developer videos, you'll see them with PS2 controllers developing the whole time. So this port to 360, so it had a boost in graphics, but I wouldn't say this was the next gen one. It wasn't enough like Project 8. This introduced more parkour controls for your walking, and you could do some BMX missions, which actually you had to do to continue the storyline. So that brought that over back from the Matt Hoffman games. This was the first one to introduce no load times, and that's in quotes here because they had the tunnel transfer. So you would go down this long, skinny path of some rails and jumps until you got to the door, which most times would have been open by the time you get there. So usually I tried to beat the door, and that's how it did the loading. So you're in the small tunnel where they could load up the next part while you're in there, and it gave you that illusion, which I liked. A lot of people did criticize it was wasted time, but I wasn't looking at a loading screen, so I didn't mind it. The story here was enough to keep you going about a kid moving over to the West Coast. This all takes place in like LA, Beverly Hills, Santa Monica, and you want to become the best skater. And you meet some friends, and you find out that there's this legendary skate park under where this guy's staying at, and you want to revive it. So this was still kind of goofy. This was after Thug 2, but it kind of went back more to the skating roots. It took away like a lot of the vehicle stuff, a lot of the stuff people didn't really like, and brought it back, which was really good. You still did some weird things, like you held onto a helicopter and dropped down on stuff, and you were just collecting a lot of the stuff for the skate park. So it was still exaggerated, but it brought it back to more skating roots, which I really enjoyed. The levels were greatly designed. This was after Thug 2 with the arcadey thing, and they kind of stuck with it a little bit, but they did expand, and I did enjoy the layout of a lot of these levels. Number 3, Tony Hawk Pro Skater 3. This game introduced revert. When you land off a quarter pipe back down, you could revert, which spins your board around and continue into a manual to do a lot more vert combinations. This was huge. And this will be the basis of all the games I mentioned beforehand. So in order to level up your skater here, you had to find these floating pro skills. There's 5 in each level. So that was a little different. The previous games, you all had to do like basically distance or air time, or different scores or amount of kickflips in one combo. This was one that you just found that. And these were pretty good graphics, counting that Tony Hawk Pro Skater 3 came out the same year the PS2 was launched. So it was still good and holds up. The controls were nice and didn't force replay back. It still stuck to you only had 2 minutes and you had to do a bunch of missions. Most missions were straightforward and were odd. The reason I put it as 3 was there was decent levels here. There were some memorable ones that I still enjoy. I always liked the cruise ship for some odd reason, and Skater Island was always cool. but nothing like stood out as like levels I constantly want to play, so that's why I knocked it down to 3. Number 2, Tony Hawk Underground 1. This was one of the ones I always talk about. This game did add driving and the ability to walk and get off your skateboard, which was the first time we saw this. The reason I do love this game is this is the first one that had a story mode, and it had the best story in the series. You're starting as a local skater, working his way up with your friend Eric. Y'all have complications, and eventually you end up making a skate video, getting back to just skating and forgetting about the money that blows up with various popular skaters. It's not the best story, so when I said best in the series, doesn't mean go get it now because you're going to love the story. It was enough to keep you going, though. Level designs were really good. They just had big missions. They all flowed together. So, like, you do this big stunt in Hawaii, which is cool, and then you always go to next levels that continue with the story. And this is what made it really good. A lot of these sections I remember, and it just was fun to play. The worst part of this game was the driving missions, like you had to race a car around, and the worst part is when you're in Canada, you have a limo to drive, and I don't know why that's even in there. But overall, this is the one that I have the most fun playing with. I beat this game probably like 10 times. This is just iconic to me. Number 1 is going to be Tony Hawk Pro Skater 2. Wow, I picked the one that came out in 2000, a lot older. So this one added manuals. You were able to create your own park and create your own skater, which was big. Again, as mentioned during the Pro Skater 1, iconic music. 1 and 2 will be forever known to have the greatest soundtracks in video games. And the levels were amazing. A lot of the levels here were more based off of real world places. Some of them on 1 had some references, but 2 had a lot more. But you had School 2 here, Hangar, Venice, which a lot of scenes of Tony Hawk, if you see older gameplays, show Venice. And then you even had the oddities of the bull ring, the chopper drop, which is just a ship with a half pipe, and Skate Heaven, which includes like all the best areas possible. So this was really cool. And the introduction of manuals made your combos really smooth, and you could do a lot more. The graphics, this is made in PS1, but even playing it today, you could tell they're dated, but they actually still hold up. I was fine playing it and didn't really notice nothing different. This game in the story added the collection of money, so there would be money floating around, and you got money for the goals you did. This also increased, you didn't just have 5 goals in each level, you had a decent amount to do. Skills, so you kind of did this addition. This is the one that I like the most out of all the Tony Hawk. Like I said earlier, all the other ones could have been like manual for 10 seconds, and you could actually knock them out at the beginning of the game. This one made a game of it. This one did start showing the oddities that we were seeing in the other Tony Hawk games, like the bull ring. There's a bull that runs around, and you have to run over poop in order to find money. But overall, this one was the most fun. I remember all these levels. I enjoyed it a lot, spent a lot of time at this, and I would recommend this one highly. So I hope you enjoyed this. These were my opinions on the rankings of the worst versus to the best Neversoft Tony Hawk games. Please let me know in the comments if you disagree and what is your list. Thank you for your time. Peace.